Hello, and thank you for joining us here today for the Advancing the Sustainable Development Goals through Sustainable and Responsible Business panel.
We hope you've enjoyed the sessions that have been happening so far and are as excited as we are to find out who will be crowned the Enactus UK National Champion 2021. If you haven't already, make sure you register for and tune in to the closing ceremony today at 4:30.
My name is Caroline, and I am the Partnerships and Engagement Manager here at Enactus UK.
And I'm Amy, and I'm the Enactus UK COO. And for this session, we'll be focusing on the importance of responsible business practices in creating a better, more sustainable future for us all.
So let's start with introductions to our fantastic panelists. David, could we come to you first?
Hi there, I'm David Haddo. I'm the co-founder of Social Shifters. Social Shifters is a brand and a platform to advocate for social entrepreneurship and the benefits of that. And we also look to support young social entrepreneurs like Enactus students through that journey.
Fantastic, thank you. And then Sadia, could we come to you next?
Sure. Hello, I'm Saida Egrested. I work as a portfolio manager where we invest in sustainable companies for our clients. And a big part of it is also talking to the companies how to help them to express their sustainable agenda for our investors, but also really in the long run for the future generation. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Richard.
Hello there, my name's Richard Wilson, work for Arla Foods. I'm the Inbound Logistics Director and have responsibility for logistics sustainability within Arla Foods.
Thank you. And then Thomas.
Hello everybody, my name is Thomas Brett. I'm working for BIC, the manufacturer of pen, shavers and lighter, and I am the Group Insight and Innovation Officer.
Brilliant. And then last but by certainly no means least, we'll go to Brian.
Hey, hello everyone, my name is Brian Johnson and I am the Director of Operational Excellence for Moy Park. My role is to work with all our team members within Moy Park to deliver sustained improvements in our ways of working and our processes using lean methodology. Moy Park is one of the UK's top 15 food manufacturers, Northern Ireland's largest private business, and one of Europe's leading poultry producers.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So really a packed panel, and I really appreciate you all taking the time out of your busy schedules today to talk to us. I know we've got a lot to discuss, so let's dig into how our partners are using the Sustainable Development Goals as a blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future. But let's just start at the beginning. So David, why should our students be aware of sustainable business?
The question, why is it important? Why should
our students be aware of sustainable business?
Well, look, I think the world is changing. The world needs to change, in fact, in fairly fundamental ways. There are kind of societal shifts required to, well, for any number of reasons. And I think students have to be aware of the change that's needed, the change that's happening, and how they can play a part in that. And I think it's on the responsibility of individuals. I think it's on the responsibility of businesses, your more traditional businesses and any new businesses to really bake in social and environmental purposes and values, and to do that genuinely, meaningfully, authentically. So it's the way it's going. Consumers are already demanding the need for change, and in how things are done, how business is done, in terms of ethics, in terms of the environment, in terms of how staff are hired and treated within the workplace. So there's many fundamental shifts happening, and I think to not be aware of it is to sort of remain ignorant to the change that is happening. And yeah, I think that without that, the current students and graduates are going to miss out and be left behind.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's great that you kind of mentioned as well the role of businesses in creating the better, more sustainable future as well. So, Brian, I wondered if we could just come to you on this, in terms of what do you feel like the role of businesses in supporting this more sustainable future that we all not only want but desperately need?
Yeah, I think David, has been spot on in his point in terms of, I think everyone is much more conscious and much more aware of what we need to do around sustainability going forward. And certainly ourselves really within My Park are committed really to developing our business in a sustainable and an ethical way, and our approach. The way we look at this is this cuts through every single thing in terms of what we do within our business. From our humble beginnings back in 1943, we have worked really closely with our customers, our suppliers, the government bodies, and our local communities, which is also a really important aspect in terms of how do we make a positive contribution to what we're trying to do in terms of sustainability. And I think it's really, really important that we just don't look at this in one or two areas. It's like every part of our business, we need to look in terms of how we can do better, how we can be more sustainable, and really engage every single member of our team to really buy into what we're trying to do in terms of sustainability.
I think there are some really good points. There's definitely a couple of questions that I'd love to circle back to later on in the panel about being kind of sustainable consumers and the role of individuals, because I think there's some amazing points we can unpack there. Saida, I wonder if we could come to you with the same question. I know a big part of your role is encouraging businesses to be more sustainable. So what do you think the role is of businesses in creating this better and more sustainable future?
Well, the way we see it, businesses can create value for the society, or it can destroy value as well if they're not careful and conscious. The good thing about the Sustainable Development Goals is that it has some timing. They are kind of designed by the United Nations to be achieved by 2030. And many of it, like, no hunger or quality education or equal opportunities. But especially when it comes to also students, decent work, right, for everybody, and really basic rights. We have certainly seen through COVID that you cannot take many things for granted, which were in the SDGs and probably maybe initially designed also for less developed parts of the world, has been now become more relevant for all of the world. So when we talk to businesses, we would ask them that, how are you treating your employees or future employees? And also, are they really trying to do anything to reduce youth unemployment, which is high at this point, also in Western Europe? And that can create also mental health problems, as we know, and it can create, lack of motivation in a world where it's very digital. You don't have really interaction with people. And students are also, really asking companies if they're actually interacting enough, thinking, ahead of time about these future workers, the future generation. They're of course consumer, but they could also be the suppliers. And then, so suppliers, customers, employees, all these are very important part. And I guess also, as Brian said, communities, that is becoming very important as well. And the SDGs there really can help, but it's both from social and environmental side. And like, even if we take the food business, there is a lot of food waste. So that is something we ask companies, how can they actually redistribute this food waste? How can they educate the consumers, the workers, the suppliers, also about the carbon content? So that's something we also ask. But at the end of the day, the SDGs are really about impact, right? As I said in the beginning, companies can impact positively or negatively. And I think the students, younger generation, are a lot more conscious about it than the older generation as well. And they do ask a lot of questions on the social side without knowing they're associated with SDGs. So also in our company, even things like gender equality, we're looking at it with a different way, in the sense that it's just not a tick box, but it really can lead companies to make more robust decisions. So, you know, taking the bigger philosophy, but trying to relate it in the real world context.
Brilliant, thank you. I think you mentioned the achievements of the SDGs and heading towards, you know, achieving impact with these by 2030. So I wondered if, Richard, you'd be able to touch on why you think sustainable business is the future for Arla and what you're doing to ensure that it is.
Yeah, certainly. So from an Arla Foods perspective, I mean, for people who don't know who Arla Foods are, we are a dairy cooperative across Northern Europe, and with other operations throughout the rest of the world. It's really important to us because we, as a dairy cooperative, we really rely on our consumers to want to buy our products, and we understand that consumer opinion in the current situation where we are now has definitely shifted over the last 10 years significantly. Consumers absolutely are very focused, laser focused on sustainable issues. Some of the things that have been spoken by some of the other panelists earlier on, very, very important to our consumers. And it's very important that we as a dairy cooperative provide products that are not only natural and sustainable in terms of the production process and the supply chain process, but things like our packaging processes are very effective. We've got good, strong plans for sustainable recycling packaging. Saida mentioned about waste. We have solutions where we work with charitable organisations to make sure that any waste streams are going to charitable organisations, so they're used effectively and not effectively wasted. Or other products go into creating renewable energy sources, so we can power factories and trucks and things like that. So we're very, very committed. We have a global organisation plan. We've got some very clear guidelines in terms of what we are aiming to achieve through over the course of the next. We've got plans 2050, but we've got a plan, a closer plan, which sort of takes us to 2030. So we've got a very clear and detailed plan of what we need to do, and we're very committed to making sure that our consumers are very aware of what we as a business are doing in the world of sustainability. So they understand the products that we're producing, because we know it's really important. We no longer think that sustainability is something that you can do if you want to. It's a bit like service, a bit like cost now. It's a factor that you have to build within your business processes, because if you don't, then the consumers will speak and they'll vote with their feet and they'll stop buying your products. So it's absolutely essential.
That's a great point, Richard, and it's great to hear as well that it is now almost like it is a strategic approach, like versus potentially before what it could have been almost a nice to do. So that it's great to hear that. And I know that we've worked really closely with Arla this year on a couple of our own sustainability projects here at Enactus UK. And I just wondered if you could quickly just mention, Richard, about your fantastic innovation that you guys have developed around how you now fuel your trucks and what you do with your things. Because I know I found that so interesting, and I think our students listening today at this panel will find that interesting as well.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, we termed it powered by poo because it effectively tells you what it does. So we took slurry from two of our not our partner farms, our owner farms. So we took them into a partner anaerobic digestion plant, which basically is a plant where you add bacteria to the poo, and then the poo gives off biogas, and the biogas is turned into biomethane, which effectively is the same as liquefied natural gas, which is a power for which you can use for trucks and cars and other sort of vehicles. So and then we took some vehicles on into our fleet. We put some nice liveries on, so you could see what there were, some good visual pictures, which our consumers really liked as well to see that. But yes, we effectively we undertook that piece of work, which means that we've been powering some of our trucks for collecting and delivering milk with the gas which comes from the cow slurry. And as a cooperative dairy business, we have lots of renewable slurry. So it's a great opportunity for us to use waste from from the animal into powering and removing diesel from requirement from trucks, which clearly is a pollutant. So yeah, we really liked that, and that's something we really got behind this year.
No, it's brilliant. And I just find it so interesting. Like, I just think it's really cool how you're using the waste from the animals that obviously are part of your business, and then using it to make a really positive impact on the environment. Excellent. Thanks so much, Richard. So just if we could come to you now, Thomas, we just wanted to hear again, just maybe some of the initiatives that you have at BIC as well, because we know it's incredibly important to BIC in terms of your values for sustainability, whether that's social or environmental impact. So we wondered if you could just give us a bit of an insight into what you're doing there.
Yeah, and actually I can start with a little bit of history and how we have evolved. So we started by just measuring the impact that we were having on different aspects, so environmental, societal, etc. And so we started by setting up a barometer that was enlightening our decision on how well we were doing. So that was 20 years ago. About 6 or 7 years ago, we started to be more proactive, and we wanted to also measure the progress and set targets. So we started to act on 5 important dimensions. The first one was how we are designing our products. So we had all of our products that were measured throughout their life cycle, the entire range of products for the three categories. That was very insightful, because actually it's interesting to understand that the biggest impact that we have on the environment is the end of life, or the usage actually of our products, more than the end of life. If you think about shaver, which I am a great example of, the most consumption of energy is coming from the usage itself with the warm water. So how do we limit the quantity of water which is necessary to rinse, etc.? So those are impacted the way we are designing our products. And we also started to convert all of our factories to use green energy. So now we are at 80% of green energy usage. We have been setting up strong targets for protecting our employees, having 0 accident in all of our factories. And we also started to act on education, because we are a player within education thanks to the stationary range. And we set up a goal for ourselves to improve the condition of learning from 250 million kids. And so every year we are conducting actions to support those elements. So that was the next level. And 4 months ago, we decided to be even more ambitious about the product themselves. And we started to set up some very strong goals to reduce the quantity of plastic that we are using in all of our products. So very strong commitment that we've established for the entire group, which is to have all of our packaging fully recyclable or compostable. And that's a big change for us, as well as on the product themselves, which, as you all know, are made of plastic. So we are converting our full range of product to be using non-virgin petroleum plastic. And that's the goal is 50% by 2030, which again, in our case, is a massive change.
Thank you. I think there's some incredible things that BIC are doing, and there's a lot to unpack. And I know that, we've talked a lot about at every organisation, responsible business should be paramount. And Brian, I'd be really interested to know, as Operations Excellence Director, how are you ensuring that you are at every level of the organisation, responsible business is paramount, and if there are any sustainable strategies or initiatives that you have internally for employees, I'd love to know, and I'm sure our students on the call would as well.
Yes, absolutely. I think, a couple of the panelists have talked about food waste. Maybe just to close that one out, really, I suppose, from a my part perspective, in terms of how important it is. Globally, there's a figure of 8% of annual greenhouse gas emissions are created as a result of producing food that is either lost or wasted. So that's a huge figure, and something that we as a business take seriously in terms of what we need to do to reduce food waste. we have introduced some new world-class process technology in some of our facilities in Ashburn, Ballymena and Dungannon around how we can improve the processes to reduce the amount of food waste as part of that. You know, and we really are committed in terms of what we're trying to do. You know, in 2017, we set ourselves an ambitious target to reduce our food waste by 50% by 2030, based on our 2015 baseline. And really it's about using initiatives at all levels of our business to really drive that. I suppose in my role as Director of Operational Excellence, it's around, you know, engaging our 9,000 colleagues to think about how we can make our business more sustainable. You know, looking at every single job and every single area, and whether that's just simply switching a light off in the office, switching off your computer, or, you know, finding new and innovative ways to run our lines more efficiently and effectively. You know, reducing waste, making our lines more efficient. But I think, you know, and a number of the panelists have already mentioned this, is around, you know, how do we engage and how do we interact this? And this is as important as our customer service level. It's as important as driving our technical and our safety standards. How we sustain our business going forward is really important.
Yeah, look, I guess, you know, I heard a comment from Saida when you spoke, and you were talking about pushing organizations to really to do this as more than a checkbox exercise, to make these things in a kind of meaningful, authentic way. And I guess when I hear Brian, Thomas, Richard speaking, you guys you're the avant-garde really in terms of big businesses on the front foot by the sounds of things. You're already kind of, there's layers to your thinking, and Thomas, in your case, you know, 6 or 7 years of kind of making this switch. Before I found my way into social enterprise and big charity organizations, I was working in the oil and gas industries. I was working in big financial institutions. And so I kind of know what goes on in those spheres and how they operate and what they're driven by. And I guess it's more of a question really to the rest of the panel, like how do you, the SDGs provide a nice label for, and perhaps a little direction, focused direction, but how do those labels transfer to driving meaningful change in big business? I guess I'm talking about big business and some of those more traditional sectors and institutions.
I think oil and gas sector is a very controversial sector still. The best way to do it, the dramatic way to do it, is really tell companies which have environmental and social controversies is that we are not going to invest in you unless you do this. So, and that might be painful in the sense that you might not have companies which are paying a lot of dividends or, you know, good coupons, but there is no other way. And I think our younger generation demand that for us, you know, as activists, and that's what we call ourselves in the sense that active ownership. So first really saying, what are also the other way? If you do this, we cannot really buy your name in the portfolio. And for example, you know, we had an engagement with Royal Dutch Shell. You know, it's a very international company. It's coming up with some targets, but that just doesn't seem ambitious for us. Now, it's nothing against Shell. It's just that if we are a sustainable investor who are investing in sustainable companies, then all the unanswered questions need to be presented to the company again and again. And in the world of SDGs, where so much focus is on equality and impact, even if one life or there's been one oil spill, which might be small in the bigger context of things, even that really matters as much as it would have. So I guess that's a new realization in the sustainable world, where in the past the focus was, is it material? Okay, the company has really messed up, but it didn't really affect their cash flow that much. And the SDGs really encourage us to think that really every life matters, you know, and every oil spill or every little environmental damage really does matter, because we only have this one world, and Arctic, it's getting worse. We know we are nowhere near 1.5 or 2 degrees. So do not invest, keep on talking to the companies, what needs to improve, especially if they're, violators of the biodiversity. I mean, we haven't talked about really biodiversity, the nature. So there are many smaller components one has to look at. But on the other hand, by challenging companies, what I think Thomas was talking about, I think he mentioned virgin petroleum plastic. Now, the average person on the street does have no clue what it means, right? So, those things are also important. Like if plastic recycling actually creates jobs, let's say in India or wherever, this new material, is it also, just not environment, but is it also making positive or negative impact somewhere else? And the companies need to give a bit more detail, which might be time consuming for the company, but it could be actually they figure out what is their business strategy that is also more, that they will make maybe not as much profit, but more consistent profit over time. So as investors, we just take every controversy a company might have on, environmental or social side, or governance, because one thing we have not mentioned, we of course have really good experts and companies in this panel who are leaders probably in their sectors, but the CEO or CFO, when they're being paid, the really high paid people, what about them? Are they personally committed? And is their long-term incentive also related to this sustainable development goal philosophy or principles? And I think that's what the least paid people in the company should be able to ask, so and the customers as well. So it's really sharing a lot, and that's again what the SDGs at the end say, that it's more peace, it's about partnerships, and investors have a big role to play, even if that means sometimes you cannot invest in certain companies.
Thank you, Saida. I think you mentioned a really interesting point about having that sustainable business philosophy. And I know, Thomas, yourself and I have talked about this. So I'd be really interested to know about how BIC has adopted that sustainable business philosophy across the organization, and what this means in practice, really, for individuals, consumers, your colleagues.
Thanks, Carolina. And actually, thanks, David, for your words and your question. And I think you are touching the art of it. For me, there are two ways to look at sustainable development. There is the first one, which is kind of a risk prevention, which we are all living, which is coming from the consumer, from the customer, from the environment, from the NGO, from the governments, the NGOs, the investors, as you said, Saida, and so on. And this is about, minimizing the risk that the negative impact that our activities could have would be perceived, and eventually communicate clearly to everybody on how well we are performing. That was the mindset of the past. The big shift that I am trying to install in BIC is to actually turn into a positive. Instead of a negative prevention, I want this approach to be a positive creation. And the positive creation is about creating value for those different stakeholders and how we are answering their needs, their questions through our actions that are translating into a business outcome. And if we really want our activities and action to be really endorsed and meaningful, they need not to be a constraint to the business, but more creating value to the business. So creating solutions that are understood by the consumer, that the consumer wants, is one of the key challenges I am giving to the marketing team. Creating solutions that are rarely impactful in terms of the full life cycles, including the post-life and how the potential waste is going into the nature, is the challenge that I am giving to the R&D team. And when you add all those pieces and it comes to a business proposal to the customer and to the consumer that resonate with their needs, this is where we win. So it's about answering those expectations from all the stakeholders that I have mentioned and making sure that we are creating value for them, because it's like that we can create value for ourselves. So that's the fundamental of the approach, and which is working very well, because that translates the sustainable development philosophy and approach from another thing to do, which is not part of my objective, to a means to obtain and achieve my objectives. And that changed completely the paradigm.
Amazing. They're so interesting. Like I keep getting lost because I keep just listening to what everybody's saying rather than realizing I've got to then ask the question, because it's I could just listen to this all day. So a couple of times it's been mentioned now about how consumers need to be more conscious, junior members of staff need to challenge when they're entering the workplace and ensure that they're asking questions and having that kind of bottom-up approach as well as the strategic top-down approach. But I'm just really conscious that we will have lots and lots of students listening to this panel today, many of whom will be entering into the workplace this summer as they go into the kind of the graduate market. So I just wanted to go to you, Brian, as to what advice would you give to students entering in who, as I'm sure you can agree with our Enactus students, are responsible future leaders, are very socially and environmentally conscious and socially minded. So what advice would you give to them entering into workplace in whatever industry they go into?
Yeah, maybe just before I come on to that point, maybe just to totally agree with what Thomas is saying in terms of, in the past, this was very much a tick box exercise, but this is more now becoming a positive attitude about driving change, about driving improvements, particularly the piece around the social aspect. And, as I mentioned to you, we have 9,000 colleagues working in Moy Park. They all are parts of communities. They all have families. They all link in with local charities and local organisations. And, we've been very aware and very conscious in terms of how local charities, the smaller charities, have really struggled during COVID in terms of funding and that aspect of it. To step into that, and we've launched a £1 million fund just to go in and work with the wee small local charities that our team colleagues are going home, and maybe at weekends they're involved with those charities and working with them and supporting them. And I think we need to do more and more of that. It's about understanding our communities, understanding where we work and how we interact with people. To your question, Amy, really, really important, and it is really, really great to see graduates and new people joining our business. And I think having that level of energy and enthusiasm and lens on environmental sustainability, our social program, and really, I suppose my advice would be to really, really encourage our graduates to really embrace what we're trying to do in Moy Park and the other organisations that are on the panel here today, is to get involved in those initiatives, to come up with new ideas, to think around, what else can we do, lead out wee small projects, come up with new ideas and interact with it, but really, really to embrace the programme that we have, and to really get involved and to think about what else could we potentially do. The other aspect is, we do a lot of this, is around benchmarking and sharing of best practices. So when graduates will join us, we want you to talk to the other graduates that you have studied with, understand what they're doing, share what we're doing here in Moy Park with those other businesses. So I think we're all in this together, and this isn't about, what we do in Moy Park. We don't tell anyone. We want to share it. We want to make sure that we, as a global company, as a global business, are sharing what we're doing. And my advice would be to graduates is, talk to other graduates, talk to other businesses, see what they're doing, so that we can learn and grow together.
I think that's a great point, and we are all in this together, because as Saida rightly mentioned, we've only got one world. Like, there's only one of them, and we need to do what we can. And everybody, I think more than ever, it's critical that we all play our part, isn't it? So excellent. Thanks for that so much, Brian. Caroline?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to kind of draw on that as well. And Saida, you've mentioned before that you are in the business of working with businesses. So I wondered, like, from your perspective, how do you see this developing further over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what else needs to be done?
I think, the younger generation, they can add in a way by challenging the older generation. And I think that's the right they have, because what the COVID has also shown that inequality actually rises, right now, and many, even like clean water or just access to medicine, to healthcare, to hospitals. There are just a lot of things where actually companies can help, because they do have some, infrastructure and financial resources. So they could bring out a bit more, which we saw actually when the first COVID came, that even telecom companies, which you wouldn't think is a sector that needs to be that much sustainable, but they did talk about that they came up with new technology that reduces, let's say, air pollution in an emerging market, right, where they have small operation. So companies really actively thinking, even if some small operations or markets are not that important for me, but I have the technology, I can actually, with very little financial resources, make a difference in that economy. That will certainly help them. But it's also about really going for lots of diverse way of approaching the SDGs. So even if you take something like zero hunger or no poverty, which might not sound relevant, but there are certain parts. It could be also we also know that women are suffering more because they're also caregivers, and they might actually go out of the workforce. So we talk a lot about flexible working in the modern world. What does that really mean? How flexible can I be? And can I actually give the employee extra training to be able to do this flexible working, and so on. But to go back to technology, we are also, asking policymakers, because the companies not always can solve all the problem, because, there is the students probably know more than me in this call, but there are new technology like carbon capture, or there could be hydrogen, which makes trucks, for example, become less fossil fuel intensive. The delivery that's required, that every day what we are, eating or using, clothes, where they're being made, is there a supply chain risk that the people there are not being treated properly, and there could be controversy. So really every aspect of our life and every aspect of our portfolios, right? So also when we're like talking to banks or insurance company or asset managers like us, again, have really the demand from our investors to have a lot more disclosure in terms of what are we doing, what are we avoiding, how are we going towards sustainable objectives. So the objectives and the reporting, right? Just like the students have a report card at the end of the year, we as asset managers also have to give a report card on our environmental footprint of the holdings we have in the fund, the social objectives, the contradictions, and the engagement with companies. So this stewardship and pushing also policymakers, because we also see in various parts of the world, the governments are, taking this environmental agenda more seriously, but they also need kind of ideas from investors. What are the priorities? So this engagement with companies, with the governments, with the future investors, and as asset managers, also disclosing information. So investors and students do not walk away from the finance profession, which if used in a proper way, in a sustainable manner, can really make a difference to the society. But I think finance has experienced some reputation damage, and this is probably also our chance to show how you can become a sustainable investor.
Thank you. I think there's some really interesting points there. And I noticed, Richard, you've got your hand up, so I wondered if we could go to you next.
Yeah, thanks very much, Caroline. Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the point that you, the question that you raised to Brian about graduates and what advice would you give. I just thought it was a relevant point just to sort of talk about what we do within Arla Foods, and then maybe give a little bit of personal advice. And that was we have a global graduate scheme for people who are looking to develop their careers in different parts of the world. So ALA offers a global graduate scheme which we take an intake in on an annual basis. We have more local graduate schemes, finance, sales, marketing, and a particular graduate scheme that I know personally very well because I've been working with it for a number of years now, is the Novus scheme, which is a supply chain and logistics program where students, and this is very much to Brian's point about we're all in it together. There are a number of organisations that participate and fund this scheme. There's over 30 organisations that co-fund the scheme, and a number of graduates taken on into a number of different universities through the UK, and then they all get positions through working on sandwich courses. They'll spend 12 months in partner organisations, and then at the end of it, they'll find themselves in a position working one of these organisations. So, a really good way of trying, if you like, before you buy. And we've had some fantastic experiences with that. One of the things I think is the really good experience, or really valuable from a student's perspective, is actually it enables you to identify whether that cultural fit piece works for you as an individual. So when you spend the time in the organisation, so ALA has got a particular culture. Pretty much all of the students who come to ALA generally like the culture, but it depends what an organisation is like as to whether that culture resonates with you and whether that fits your personal values. So we're talking about sustainability. We're talking about some of the conversations we've had about being responsible in our corporate social responsibility. But probably for me, the best way is to try and actually get into the organisation and see it. So it's okay for people like myself to say, yeah, we're brilliant, we're great, we're a really good organisation, you'll love working with us. But actually see it for yourself, and if it resonates with your own personal skills and values, then that I think is probably the best way of developing your career. That's the point I wanted to raise. But thanks for the opportunity.
Amazing. No, that was great, and totally agree. And we actually had a panel earlier on yesterday in the National Expo, which was all around belonging in a workplace, and that was another good point that was brought up in that as well. So about feeling at home and feeling like you're part of the organisation. So fantastic point. So we're kind of drawing to the close now, but before we kind of go on to advice and on how to be more conscious consumers, I just thought, David, that this would be a great opportunity to come back to you here, and hopefully we'll support. I muted myself. I don't know how I did that. So I just thought, David, this would be a great opportunity to come back to you here and just highlight some of the fantastic stuff you're doing. So we've talked about the importance of graduates entering into the workplace in whatever industry they decide to go into, but how to make them more kind of socially, environmentally conscious from the offset. And I know you do a fantastic job at that with the Social Shifters platform, and in particular Steps to Startup, in helping create socially responsible businesses. So we just wondered if you could touch on that and what you're doing to help the future generation become more responsible business owners, founders, partakers, entrepreneurs, and all of the above.
Yeah, thanks for giving me an opportunity to plug what we're doing. I won't be too shameless with that, but yeah, look, I guess to draw on what is being discussed here today by the panel members, it's really, it's encouraging for me to hear, Saida, and that there is a kind of divestment movement happening, and that there are organisations really at the forefront of this that are already making substantial changes to the way that they operate, the way that they do business. My faith, if you want to call it that personally, is on the individuals in a number of senses to do that, to really drive that change, to demand it, in fact. And what we're trying to do with Social Shifters, I think, is open up a really broad dialogue about this. And that's why I think we can work quite well with Enactus and Enactus students, because we're sort of trying to say, whether your vehicle is corporate or whether your vehicle is social enterprise or non-profit or cooperatives, that the fundamental shift that's required is one of social and environmental purpose, and pretty much, that applies pretty much anything that we do. So yeah, what we can do with social shifters, or what we're trying to do is open that dialogue, have that conversation, and support people who align with it, who are kind of motivated and driven, and feel that they want to tackle something in their local community. And the Shifters platform, really has a whole bunch of free resources that can help people take those first steps to kind of understanding how they might start to tackle that. That could be a venture or an enterprise, but it could also just be something simple like a project or a campaign. So there are different ways that you can get involved and contribute. Activism is something we're going to start looking at in a big way as well, that that individual can demand change through their own actions as a consumer, as an employee, or as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. And it all starts somewhere, doesn't it? Excellent. Thanks so much, David. Caroline?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting point that you've raised, David, about activism. And I'm sure a lot of students on the call will be inspired to take action off the back of this panel. But I wondered if I could ask all panelists as a part of a closing statement, really, to say, what advice would you give to our students who are watching this call, or who are watching a recording of this call after the National Expo? Brian, I wondered if we could go to you.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, look at, first of all, thanks for taking the time to listen to us, talk about our businesses, our thoughts, our vision, and our passion on this topic. Really just my advice to you is really embrace this. Really understand what sustainability and social governance really means. Whether that's from your own perspective, or whether that is when you join a business such as My Park. It's around how you can influence change, and whether that is just being part of a team or you driving a project. But do not lose your passion, do not lose your energy, do not lose your enthusiasm for this topic. We have one world, we're all in this together, so let's really drive a real change in ways we do, in terms of driving our sustainability and our best practices for a better world.
Thank you, Brian. I think there's some great advice there. Thomas, could we come to you next?
Sure, and thanks as well for inviting us to this forum, and thanks to the other participants. It was very insightful for me as well. We always learn. What I would tell to the student is two things. Is first, be very proud of your conviction. Build your conviction and know what is important for you, and what you believe, and how you want to be part of the journey. And the second thing is, be very savvy on understanding what is important for the organization that you are working with, for the clients that you have in front of you, for the governments that are sometimes in front of you as well, and what is important for them in their big picture, and how to use your conviction to help support those ambitions, and how it can bring value to the food chain. That's the best way to see your conviction being come to life. So marry the two.
Thank you. And Richard, same question.
Yeah, and also thank you to Amy and Caroline for the invitation, and for the students to taking the time to listen to this. Similar to Thomas, probably 2 points. The first, keep them fairly brief. First is be curious. Be very curious in all of the things that you do. Ask the questions, and there are never any silly questions. So even though you may feel there may be silly questions, ask them, because there might be a lot of other people thinking exactly the same, but not brave enough to ask the question. And just try and make a positive difference in whatever you do, whatever walk of life you choose. Try and make things better than today. Try and make today better than yesterday. So just try and make a positive difference. Thank you.
I think that's a lovely piece of advice. Thank you, Richard. And then David, could we go to you?
Oh, advice. Yeah, do I have any advice?
Sign up to Social Shifters.
Yeah, look, I think, well, look, my personal journey has kind of brought me back to a point where I decided to make my career, or to shape my career around my kind of personal passions and interests. So that's maybe not going to work for everybody, but it's certainly brought more joy, more interest, more excitement to my own career. So yeah, perhaps I can do that for others. So and our kind of our tagline at Shifters is find your passion and take action. So yeah, if you do have a passion for this stuff and you feel driven by it and motivated by it, do something with that.
Okay, excellent. And I think that fits in really nicely with what Thomas was saying as well about values of organizations and going and marrying the two together and doing what you love, really. Brilliant. So that brings us to a close. So what a fantastic panel. Thank you so much to all the guests for joining us online. We're grateful for not only your support today, but your support as representatives from our partner organizations, that we really wouldn't be able to do this without you. So thank you so much.
And we really hope that you've gotten a lot out of this panel, and know that Amy and myself has. It's been really great to listen to all the insights across the panelists today. But we would love to hear any comments that you might have, or thoughts on some of the themes that we've discussed today. So if you would like to contribute to the discussion, make sure you do that on our Facebook page, on our Twitter feed, LinkedIn and Instagram. Like, we would love to hear what you thought about it.
And don't forget, you can join us over the course of the National Expo for many more interesting panels and masterclasses. This is the third day of the National Expo, so please go and re-watch some of the replays from the panelists and masterclasses that we've already had. And of course, join us later for the crowning of the National Champion 2021. So if you haven't signed up already, register now. We hope you can join as many as you can. But for now, thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.